A few weeks before the release of iOS 16 Beta 1, I tweeted out this. I wrote lock screen notifications on iOS 15 is a mess, and I'm hoping that iOS 16 will clean this up a bit. A seemingly innocent tweet. But naturally, I should have known better because I got absolutely bombarded with hate comments, telling me things like there was nothing wrong with it and I was just being an Android fanboy, even though I mainly do use an iPhone 13 mini. Fast forward a few weeks and coincidentally for me, I didn't have to do too much explaining. Because on iOS 16, Apple completely cleaned up the UI, including the way notifications are both displayed and the direction in which notifications come from. Notifications on iOS 16 now come from the bottom of the phone, and they're stacked up in a clean, organized looking manner. Notifications coming in from the bottom of your phone makes using the iPhone 13 mini all the more easier. Simply swipe up from the bottom to view all of your notifications, and if they aren't important, just swipe them away. This is a fantastic change that I've been asking for quite some time, and Apple finally delivered. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. If you're an avid viewer of the channel, then you probably know that my daily driver of choice is the iPhone 13 mini. This is the phone I choose to use on a daily basis, and there are many reasons for that. I've been using this phone for the better part of 9 months now, and I have to admit I'm completely crushed that Apple is discontinuing the mini lineup. This will be the last ever mini iPhone ever made, and that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. But today I want to talk to you guys about how my experience has been thus far on iOS 16 using the iPhone 13 mini after 1 month of consistent usage. And you know what? You guys are absolutely going to love this update once you do receive it in the fall. Quite honestly, I didn't expect Apple to give us half the changes that they did, but here we are. Just a quick PSA, if you do want to install iOS 16 on your main iPhone, I highly recommend against that. So far, iOS 16 is just a beta release and the software is just not stable enough to install on your main device, so do proceed with caution. How's it going everyone? My name is RJ, and in this video we'll be discussing my thoughts on iOS 16 using the iPhone 13 mini. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, I do feel like a majority of the changes to iOS 16 conveniently benefit the form factor of the 13 mini. A lot of the changes really do make sense given this phone's small compact size and the form factor, and we will get into all of that a little bit later in the video. But first, let's talk about the biggest change yet to iOS 16, the lock screen overhaul. A major change to iOS 16 is we now have complete control over the look and feel of the lock screen. You can now add useful data visuals in the form of widgets to your lock screen and have access to valuable information just with a quick glance. You can now customize the clock, the font color. You can even now bring wallpapers in front of the clock, which gives off a really cool parallax effect. And overall, it's just a much cleaner interface now, which I think is fantastic. But for some odd reason, we still can't add a battery widget to the lock screen. However, you can add an Apple Watch battery widget, which makes the lack of an iPhone battery widget all the more confusing. A big reason why the lock screen overhaul is so important is primarily because on an iPhone, we have to bypass the lock screen to get into our phone. What do I exactly mean by that? Well, on an iPhone that uses Face ID, we first have to bring the iPhone to our face. It then unlocks using Face ID, and then we do have to swipe up on the lock screen to get into our phone. However, on an Android device, you can just bypass the lock screen altogether by simply using your fingerprint. Given the fact that iPhone users do have to interact with the lock screen, this makes the lock screen overhaul all the more important. Another underrated change that's being overlooked is that Face ID now works in a landscape orientation. This may be a minor change to many people, but for myself, this is huge. The amount of times I've watched a video, paused it, and came back to it, but had to flip my phone around in a vertical orientation just to get Face ID to work was far too many. Face ID now working in a landscape orientation is a huge change for myself personally, and it just adds an overall layer of convenience while using the iPhone 13 mini. Another big improvement which I do appreciate is found within the native iOS keyboard. Dictation using your voice is now continuous, meaning the iOS keyboard stays open and in place while you do dictate your sentences. This allows us to seamlessly switch back between typing and dictation while using the keyboard. On iOS 16, dictation now automatically adds punctuation, and it does seem like dictation as a whole has improved a tad bit better to understand our speech patterns and decipher our speech into text. This is particularly beneficial to a phone like the iPhone 13 mini, because some people do find it difficult to type on a smaller keyboard such as this. I personally don't have any issues. I can type away entire paragraphs with just using one hand. I have heard many complaints though of the keyboard being too small to be considered functional. So being able to use continuous dictation on iOS 16 is a big benefit to the iPhone 13 mini and the iPhone 12 mini. One of my favorite changes to iOS 16 is that we can now edit and undo text messages. This was rumored to happen for a long time, and now it's finally here. Sent text messages can now be edited within 15 minutes of it being sent. if the person you're sending a message to is on an older version of iOS, they'll still be able to see deleted or edited messages in its original form. So make sure all of your family and friends do update to iOS 16 so we can all enjoy the full benefits of this update. Before we continue to one of my favorite features on iOS 16, I just want to let you guys know that there are a few more iPhone 13 mini videos in the pipeline that will be released in the next few weeks, including a video breaking down my day in the life with the iPhone 13 mini. So if you do find value in this video and you want to stick around for more iPhone 13 mini content, then do me a huge favor and drop a like on this video, and of course subscribe to the channel for a lot more high quality tech content. One of the most useful changes for myself is that on iOS 16 there's a search bar found on the bottom of the home screen. This is such a minute change, but it completely changes the way I interact with my device. Instead of swiping down on my home screen for Spotlight, I can now conveniently tap search on the bottom of my mini and search up any app that I want. This specific change is excellent on the mini because it's such a one-handed device, and the search bar being right there on the bottom makes using the mini a lot more enjoyable, and not to mention it does save me a fraction of a second. Another big change is that we can now cut out images from the photos gallery and paste it pretty much in any app. So if I want to cut out this image right here, just press and hold down on it. The cutout of the image is now selected, and you can now just drag this thing to your Notes app or Messages app or even your email. For the time being, it's not a perfect cutout, but you have to remember this update is only a beta and it will get more refined as we do draw closer to the fall. As exciting as iOS 16 is, I would highly recommend against installing this update on your main device. Although for a beta, this update is quite stable, the battery life has been terrible, and I mean terrible. The iPhone 13 mini as is already has pretty poor screen on times, but on iOS 16, the software is constantly debugging in the background. I'm barely able to get around 3 hours of screen on time with iOS 16. So if you like using your phone throughout the day, then you'll be patient a little while longer. It's an absolute shame that Apple is getting rid of the mini lineup, because I do feel like some of these changes to iOS 16 were made by Apple with one-handed usage in mind, and there isn't a more friendly one-handed device out there than the iPhone 13 mini. However, that's not to say Apple will no longer be selling the 13 mini as a part of their lineup next year. I have heard rumors that the 13 mini will still be a part of Apple's lineup of iPhones, so we can expect OS updates for the 13 mini for at least the next 4 to 5 years. You guys are absolutely going to love the iOS 16 updates to your 13 mini. The lock screen overhaul is huge. We finally have a useful lock screen that gives us important visual information in the form of widgets. We now have better notification management. We have continuous voice dictation now. We can also search for any app on the bottom of our home screen. Not to mention, we also have some pretty useful features like the ability to edit and unsend text messages. That's pretty much the major changes to iOS 16. And so far, I've been loving the update. Make sure you guys check out some of my other iPhone 13 mini videos and stay tuned to the channel for a lot more iPhone 13 mini content. As always, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to flex with your iOS 16 tech.